Do that again. I want, I want to see it on recording. Yeah, it's not calming down at all. Okay.
Okay.
Hello, my friends, and welcome to this third season of Brand Your Dream Show. Today, our guest, Cara Wilson. She's high performance leadership coach, and today we're going to talk about leadership. And you can say she's hilarious, I'm hilarious. It will be a lot of fun. So I hope so, Cara. How are you doing?
I'm good. We're ready now.
Fantastic. So, how you started your idea to work with leadership? That's not unusual for you. I know that you are great leaders. I know that you are great in management. So, tell us a little bit about your story.
That's a great question. So I fell into leadership. It kind of was one of those things that I just maybe because I'm bossy and I just do the things when you see the things and you see the people and you see that somebody has a better skill at it, you are like, hey, why don't you do this thing? Clearly you're good at it. And they're like, oh, you noticed. And I'm like, yeah, I did. And then they do it and they do it way better than I could ever have done it. So I've kind of always fallen into that position. But the moment I realized what leadership was, um, I had done a lot of management, and I'm a terrible manager. I am hard to manage, and I'm not good at managing people. But I'm a great leader. And when I figured out that difference, I got hired at a pet store accidentally. I went in wanting a menial job where I could just clean poop, because if there's animals, there's poop. And when I asked about a cleaning job, they said, "Did you have management experience?" And I was like, yeah. But, are you hiring for anybody to clean? Is what I asked. So, like, yeah, for a manager tomorrow. Can you start? Okay, but I don't know anything about pet stores. Like nothing about pet stores at all. Like I nothing. I've done sales offices, I've done restaurants, I've done all these, but I don't know. And she's like, no, if you can work with people, that's what I need. I was like, okay. So I get into the first day at this job that I know nothing about, and I have a whole crew that I'm supposed to be in charge of. And as we've covered, I'm really bad at managing. So I went up and I said, guys, I know technically I got hired as your boss, but you know more than I do.
Mhm.
So you're going to have to teach me what you need from me to help make your job easier. What do you think about that? And they were like, actually, that kind of sounds great. I was like, cool. This is what I know that we need to get done today. What am I missing? And they gave me like 6 other things they were supposed to do. And I was like, cool. What do you need to do? What do I need to do to help you do that? And then they just told me. So I did that and they got everything done.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was like, huh. You mean if you don't manage them, you don't tell them what to do, you don't hover, you don't force, you just let them do the job you're paying them for and you support them in doing it, then they just do it.
Hmm. That's a
Huh,
revelation.
that's so easy. Yeah, and that's the moment I fell in love with leadership and I was like, whoa, if like this is the simplest thing in the entire world, why don't more leaders do this?
Hmm. Micromanagement, control
Yeah.
issues.
Yeah. Why put yourself and your team through that when it's literally easier to be lazier?
Yeah, exactly. That's
Yeah.
fantastic. So, what I want to ask from you, basically, we always start with visibility. And I know that you're showing up everywhere with your absolutely fantastic character because you are lovable, you are kind, you are amazing. And I was in your group and connected with people who are amazing. You're connecting amazing people around you as well. And they love you because you are absolutely lovable. So you are indeed fantastic leader. Speaking about that, not everybody are that amazing like you, right? I don't consider that about myself, for example. So how you connect with people, how do you think visibility can be enhanced or managed, how people can be visible and get that connection heart to heart with people. Because it's not about just being visible in your business, it's actually more important how you connect with people. So you're not just visible, but you're connecting with them. So how do you manage this? What are your suggestions about that?
Visibility. So that's, I mean, there is just so many layers to that conversation, isn't there? But really, and I know we're going to come to authenticity, but it is allowing your hot mess out into the world.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, here's something I know, and I know it deep in my bones, and hopefully this will resonate with anybody listening. But we're meat suits, full of hormone soup, controlled by mush management and made of stardust. Trauma and drama, that's just a natural byproduct of trying to navigate one meat suit in a universe full of meat suits. And Brene Brown has made the term messy middle really popular, right? But I don't know anybody or any process in existence where the middle isn't messy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if your middle is messy, you're doing it right. And if we normalize that, if we allow that to be
Remind me, I will
visible,
need to record these phrases for me to wake up in the morning as my alarm clock.
yes,
You're
if your
doing it
middle is
right.
messy, you're
Get up.
doing it right. Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
And that's allowing that to be visible
Mhm.
allows people not, it's too easy to feel like we have to be perfect, that
Oh,
we
yeah.
put that front up and we show up like a manager because we're managing people.
Mhm.
And we're that, no one likes that. We don't even, the people who put that show on don't even enjoy it. It's exhausting.
Yeah.
But coffee delivery.
You manifested it.
I just thought I don't have any more coffee. Uh, so allowing your mess so that other people can see that mess is not a problem, it's just an opportunity. And
Mhm.
making that the thing that is visible. It's not about the fail. We're all gonna fail. I mean, I have a toddler, and I don't know if you've ever tried to watch a toddler learn how to take steps. But the number of failures before they even take their first step is astronomical. They put their foot up, they take it down. They put their foot up, they take it down. They put their foot up, they put a little weight on it, they take it right back down. Right? and and that's all of us. All of us fail. And we focus on that. That's the thing that we tend to make visible is these failures, right? Because
Mhm.
they hit so hard.
Mhm.
So I just switched it and I was like, oh yeah, I fail. I'm so good at it. I consider myself a failure expert, right? Um, but that's not really what it's about. Like Fe on the periodic table, because I'm a giant nerd, also stands for iron.
Yeah.
And I don't know how a human can be stronger than more failure. I mean,
Mhm.
it allows you to learn, it allows you to grow. It is how we do things. And so making that the thing that's visible, not that everybody fails,
Mhm.
but the fact that you can choose to continue on, you can choose to become strong, you can choose to grow from that. As a leader, making that the thing that's visible, making that the thing that is what you talk about and how you function, changes the dynamic entirely.
It's fantastic. It's absolutely resonate with another guest from the show, Laurie Robertson, who she's a public speaker, and she said very interesting thing. She said, nobody cares how you fail. Everybody cares how you're going to get up. And
Yes.
absolutely, that's fantastic. I so agree with you. And I remember we were doing the show with my friend Jonathan, and we started doing the show and failed miserably so many times, technically, first of all, because we were trying to broadcast from Zoom to Facebook by that time, which was not perfect,
Uh-huh.
at least as minimum. It was really not perfect. And sometimes we were starting like half an hour later. Sometimes we were talking to ourselves like for half an hour without realizing we're not broadcasting. So for next probably 10 shows, we said we aim to fail and we aim to fail miserably, but let it be
Yeah.
hilarious. And this is when we start. And this was the aim of our show. We started with this failure in mind, but actually, we quite enjoy it. And I guess our
Yeah.
viewers also enjoy it because there was a lot of fun. So, speaking about that, let's speak about authenticity. It's interesting because speaking with you about authenticity, it's something specific because you are a very unique person, to be honest. I met many people in my life, and you one of the few, if not to say only, who is incredibly happy, naturally happy person. And it's contagious. I can tell that, when we speak, and it's not the first time when we speak. I've been on your show, in your group, we had one-to-ones and all the things. It's always uplifting. And we literally just laugh like, 1 hour before the show. So it was difficult to start. So you are a naturally happy person. Not everybody like that. So thinking about that, I think it's include a lot of kindness, a lot of acceptance, because being just happy, it's probably crazy. You're not
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
You are genuinely kind person. You are genuinely understanding person. You genuinely care about people because I could see how you handle your own show. So speaking about authenticity, what are the best practices for people to show up authentically for the business?
Ooh, that's a good question. How to show up authentically for the business. It's a hard practice. I mean, I mean, happiness. So choosing to be happy is not an easy choice. It is one that I make consistently, and I have been doing it for a long time. It's become more part of who I am, and less like a thing I have to do. Um, but that's how it works with your business, right? You make the choices, and then because you're choosing that, it starts to become who you are, right? It's
Mhm,
the habit that you're building. And if you want, and this is really hard, okay, it's going to sound so simple because it is,
mhm,
but simple is not easy. It's really hard because you have to do this every day. And the key is to ask yourself what success looks like for you and how you want to go about it. And I ask that question a lot. And what people hear is, what does success look like and how do I achieve it? And that is not what I said, um, because success by its nature is transient. So, what is successful for me in my business is completely different than the other high performance leadership coach who does 90% of the exact same as me, but has a different life. It's there, we do the same thing and come at it a completely different way. Success for them is not my success. Shoot, success for me today is not the same as yesterday, and
mhm.
it sure is not the same as a year ago, and it will not be the same 5 years from now. So learning what is genuinely successful for you for your business is how you reach that level of authenticity in your business where you are no longer doing what you should do. You're no longer following what other people have told you is the thing to do or what works generally. All of those can be valid. All of those, and it could be that you're like, that is what success is to me. Cool. But it might not be. And it might not be that tomorrow. So, really taking 5 minutes every morning at the beginning of your day and saying, what's going to make me feel successful today? And how is that going to make me feel successful this week? And is there anything I can do this week that's going to make next week a little more successful because I did it today? And those three questions, today, this week, and one thing to make next week easier, that will get you being showing up authentically to your business every day for what works for you.
Fantastic. I love your definitions, to be honest, because I know that you're a nerd and you just gave me the phrase which I now repeat to everybody. You say, like, let's nerd together. And I'm like, yes, that's exactly what I love to do. So, loving how you express your nerdiness, I want to ask you, give me the definition of leadership.
For me, and I'm not going to give you the technical term because I actually don't agree with it.
Exactly, I want your definition. That's
Yeah.
why I'm asking.
So I think for me, a true leader is somebody who holds space to allow somebody else to follow the path. So we've already followed the path and done it our way. And we often leaders have like been the machete wielder in the front, clearing the path, right? But there's lots of ways to walk down the exact same path. And often leaders expect you to walk the same path, follow my steps exactly.
Hmm.
And that's more managing, in my opinion. That I'm managing where you're stepping. I'm managing to keep you, and there are times when that has to happen. But a leader says, this is the path.
Hmm.
Beware of that rock, and allows the other person to follow their way down that path. And then is there, if they miss the rock, to catch them when they stumble.
Hmm.
So leadership is like adulting, right?
Hmm.
And lots of expectations, very little training, but lots of expectations. And the expectation is that you're going to hit the big things and you're going to get those out of the way. But it's the little spots where you have to create a safe space for somebody else because you've already done it and it's not your job anymore. You have to make the space for them to do it so they can go where you want to go.
Hmm. This is interesting. So I know that you're writing book which is related to Alice in Wonderland. So I love that part. So very unusual approach to leadership. And I want to hear a little bit more about the leadership and how do you think people need to approach, say, first steps on the leadership path? Because let's say you start your career whenever you started. I mean, it could be in corporates. It can be that you just an entrepreneur alone and you're just looking to get some people in your team or collaborate with someone like vendors. So, for example, I don't have my own team on board, but I collaborate with several companies. It's more comfortable for me in this at this point of my business. So, how people need to approach, say, leadership? Because what I heard a lot from my entrepreneurial friends, exactly what you said. I am inspiring my team. I am not a manager. I'm not here to supervise them or control them. So, where do you think people can start on this path?
Growing up. I know that sounds like way too
Potty
simple,
training. I expected that.
um, but literally, so one of the courses that I teach is evoking lucky. It's how to engage your lucky
Mhm,
leadership gene, right? And it starts with leadership is as simple as growing up. And anybody who's grown up knows it's not simple. Like
mhm,
that, there was no part of it. Like you couldn't pay me to go back to teenage them. There's not enough money on the planet.
mhm. Yeah.
Thank you, no. Yeah, haha, simple as growing up. But really, that's it. If you have gone from being a kid through being a child to into adulthood, then you have followed all of the steps of leadership. It's the same thing. But you have to have all of the steps because there are times when you need to be a kid again, just like as a leader. You have to go back and be that operations person. You have to get in the dirt and experience what they're experiencing so you can understand where they are, so you can get down to their level. Like literally how you would get down on the floor with a toddler, you have to do that with your team. You have to
Mhm,
get down to where they are. But you have to manage too, right? Like so that's that childish middle space where you've discovered independence, but they haven't quite figured out interdependence as a leader. Ideally, you've figured out interdependence and how things work together. But the people as they're going from starting in operations and being a kid, they go to their inner independence and learn how to manage themselves, how to work with the tools. You learn the skill, then you learn the tools, and then you learn the mindset. It's a process, but you have to have all of them. So a leader has all of those. They recognize that all of those steps are still valid and still get used literally every day. I say playing is the skill of doing your job. Learning is the tool for the work, and your mind and growing is the mindset for. Oh no, I just lost my last word. Fixing. To the fix. If you want to fix up your future, you got to
Hmm.
have a growth mindset.
So speaking about that last word, let's start from there.
Yep.
Basically, I talk a lot about the mindset and I talk a lot about how people think. And leadership, I think, a lot related to their mindset and to the way how people think. So, how people can start changing their thinking patterns if they want to move from micromanagement, controlling, lack of belief in the team. Sometimes people just afraid to be successful. That's when they are micromanaging. So how people can move in terms of mindset towards leadership mentality, like how they can start trusting more and delegate, probably.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. That is one of the top skills. Yeah.
Mhm.
And it comes from, I call it the me we, because that's fun to say. But that's how it works. So the mindset, as a leader, your mindset has to be about you first. And I
Mhm.
know that sounds narcissistic and it can go to a bad place, but it's only you first, and then it's we second, because you have to get yourself in a place where you can be in that place for them. So it
Mhm.
starts with me and taking care of what I need, because if I don't, then I don't have the things that I need to take care of the things that I need to take care of. Huh, weird. And if I don't have those things, how can I do that for someone else? Mm-mm. So if you want to have more trust in your team, you have to extend that trust. You have to show them what trust looks like. As the leader, you have to lead them on that path, which means you have to deal with your stuff so you can provide that trust. And then they're like, oh, that's what that looks like. Cool, I can do it. And you're like, awesome, I thought you could. If you want to be able to delegate, you have to decide what are the things that you really like doing and keep those. Take care of yourself. What is the stuff that you do that you're like, no, but I like this part, and then keep it. And then everything else, ask them what they like. So first you take care of me, and then you look at we. I This is a great mindset shift, and it's one that takes practice. But when you get it, because you can know something, but you don't know till you know. And even
Mhm.
when you know, you might not do it. Hashtag adulting. But if you really want to be able to delegate in a way that is joyful
Mhm.
and easy, I call it the sock situation. So my husband and I, as we're dividing up chores, right, in the house, he's great at loading. Actually, he's kind of retentive about loading the dishwasher. So that's his zone, because I don't put it in the right place. But he doesn't like unloading the dishwasher. Like, it irritates him that there's a step after the step. Whereas for me, like, the unloading of the dishwasher is like tying a pretty bow on the package. Like, you're tucking everything back into their little homes. So he loads the dishwasher and I unload it. I don't mind doing laundry. I hate folding socks. I don't know if there is a childhood trauma attached to this. I don't know. I'm not a therapist, but I hate folding socks. Yeah, it irritates me. I have a bucket where all of my socks go because I don't fold socks. However, my husband, it sends him out. It's like making little nested containers that you can just then grab for later. So he loves to like fold the socks just right and tuck it in so it doesn't stretch too much. And he's got a whole system. It sounds crazy to me. It sounds like the most irritating, but he loves it.
Mhm.
And it's just like that in business. As a leader, there are things that I like to do that makes me feel like I'm putting a finishing touch on something. It makes the whole process complete, and that's my happy zone. But folding the socks, I don't like to do. However, there is someone on your team who's like, that's their pretty bow. That's their happy place. And if you just ask, and that is the hardest step. Like, that's the practice part, is learning to ask, what do you like to do? What do you want to do? Here are the things that have to get done. Do any of them look exciting to you? And the odds are yes. one of those things that you do not want to do is 100% something they're like, I have been dying to learn that. You're like, awesome.
Mhm.
I would love to teach you.
Fantastic. So, how do you think you can approach that? Because I know that for many younger leaders who just starting, it's really difficult, especially if you have a team who is like elder than you, or you are a woman and you have to lead elder, more
Yes.
experienced men, for example,
Yeah.
societal
Mm-hmm.
thing, all this jazz.
Mm-hmm.
So, how are you going to ask them what they like to do? It's easy for you and me because we've been in that like forever. And to be
Right.
honest, I think it's easy for women and mothers in general because, what you describe is pretty much not about business, but about motherhood.
Yeah.
But the thing is that when you are, say, I don't know, 25, 30 years old, and you are in this situation when that's your first time when you step into this leadership position and you have to be there, what is the best way to approach this situation when you ask Sam, what do you like to do?
Yeah.
55 years old John, who's been in this business like forever, and I'm your boss right now.
Yeah. No, that's super legit. The first time I had to do it, I was 24 and I was in a room full of 40 and to 60-year-old men, and they all just looked at me.
Hmm.
I'm like, oh, this is gonna be fun.
Yeah.
So I started with a little controversy. That's my favorite way. I think if you kind of just rip the band-aid off. What is the term? Eat the frog first, right? If you start your day by eating a frog every day, after that, I mean, what's worse than eating a frog every day? Everything after that is going to be easier, right? So just
French
thinking
would
about
not
what.
agree with you, but okay.
Okay, fair enough. And they're not wrong. If you eat French frog legs, they're delicious. Okay, fair enough. Creole is
Okay.
good too.
Never
But
tried.
I'm thinking raw frog, right? Okay. But that's the same kind of concept. So I always start a delegation conversation with clarification, right? So there's no such thing as confrontation if every conversation is for clarification. So I start with a clarity on accountability versus responsibility. So this is a spot that in our new normal post-pandemic world, it really needs to get addressed because there is some crossover on the old normal of like holding people accountable and versus holding them responsible. And controversial opinion, you cannot hold someone accountable. Don't work. You cannot do it. Period. You can hold them responsible because a responsibility is a duty. You can give a duty. You can give a task. You can hold somebody to completing this thing. Accountability is taking into account what we are able to do, and that is going to change sometimes by the minute, depending on what is going on in your life.
Hmm.
So you can help somebody with their accountability. You can be an accountability buddy,
Hmm.
but you can't hold them to it. That's going to change.
Right.
You have to help them. You can't hold them responsible. So you start with that conversation, right? Here's the difference. So here are the responsibilities that we need to accomplish. Facts. Like this is just the job, guys. Like this isn't a me telling you a thing. Probably none of this is new. And then I go for validation, right? So first I set some clarification and then I go for validation. And it is here's what the company says we have to do, right? The business, the job, the boss, whatever. You guys have been doing this a really long time though. What do we really need to do? And then they get to be the smart one in the room, which everybody loves to be the smart one. And especially if they're telling you about your job. Oh, they love it.
Hmm.
So now we line out the responsibilities and I take their expert opinion. So validating them in the process. Cool. Now we have all of this. Who wants to be responsible for which item? And now they've already picked the list. So then they get to pick from the list that they created.
Wow.
Cool. My job is not to make you do that job. You already know the job. You know this job better than I do. You've been doing this for 20 years, and I'm only 20 years old. But my job is to make sure you can do that. So I'm going to be your buddy. I'm going to be that accountability buddy. And we're going to check in on this date. And I'm going to find out where you are. And we're going to figure out what it's going to take and what I need to do to help you accomplish that.
Hmm. That's phenomenal. It's really different approach because I think that many of us, especially women, we try to get there intuitively because I've been in this situation for many years and I think that it was more like intuitive approach. Most of my people, I always say my people, not my team, my people,
Yeah.
they still addressing me like, you are my guru and I worry about you and things like that. Most of
Yeah.
my people become entrepreneurs because I teach people entrepreneurship. Whenever I worked, I always teach people how to start the business and do the business. So, I mean, you can take it from me. But people obviously appreciate it after all, because I think
Yep.
80% of my teams usually opening the business after some time. So it's really, really practical. And that's ultimately what I teach on
Yep.
my courses. So, yeah, it works. So, thing is, I love that in your approach you give the logic behind that. So it will help many people to understand how to move from the controlling towards the delegation. I think it will work absolutely great. Now, I want to address a little bit the idea about the online part that you mentioned, a post-pandemic thing, and we
Yeah.
all work remotely. I know that there is a big elephant in the room, especially when we work with teams, and the accountability is there. But this is, 50-50. Many offices right now thinking about taking people back in office because they can see what people do, they
Yeah.
can control them. And
Yeah.
as we say, the controlling is not the thing, it's really about the responsibility for the actions. So,
Yes.
how we can address this in the team which working online remotely and probably in different countries, so we're not even speaking about office situation.
Yep.
Go on.
Oh, I love that. Buy wins. That's
Mhm.
why it seems like the stupidest, simplest answer, but 100% that is the answer. Set it by win. You, the old normal was that we would hover over you, we'd watch, we made sure you stayed busy for 8 hours a day, which
Mm,
is dumb.
yeah.
Because as soon as you get into that is practical at operations level.
Mhm.
Operations is busy 8 hours a day. Operations is busy 14 hours a day. Operations is busy 16 hours a day. Like that's operations. But as soon as you get further up the ladder, especially if you're in a C-suite space, you are not busy 8 hours a day. You're in meetings for six of them,
Mhm.
but I don't know how many business meetings you have been in. I've been in a lot of them, and usually they're not about being busy. They're just about talking about being busy.
Yeah, exactly.
So this concept that we have to monitor productivity by the minute is dumb. I'm going to just say that again. Monitoring productivity by the minute is dumb. If that is the way you and your business is doing things, that's some old normal. Welcome to the post-pandemic new normal. Hi. Here we set responsibilities and a buy when attached to that. This is what needs to be accomplished, and this is when it has to be accomplished. If that happens, you go, yay, we accomplished it. And if it doesn't, then you have that conversation. Hey, why did this not happen? Was there not enough time? Was there not enough resources? Did you not focus enough? Why did it not happen? And then instead of beating them up for not achieving whatever goal, for let's say failing, like we all have done a lot in our life, instead of that, you just say, cool, what are we going to do to keep that from ever happening again? Because anything else is excuse based. If you take that away, if you stop finding blame and stop punishing people for being a human being and not always perfect, if you stop that, that means that they can be accountable. They can decide and make choices that eliminate that problem in the future. It allows them to grow into that space. And then all of your things will get accomplished. And you don't have to watch them or monitor them. You simply say, this is when I need it. And then they deliver it by that date.
Speaking about that, in my experience, I had a few vendors and a few colleagues, in fact, who never could stick to timeline. That is an ultimate issue for many people in the world. And with one guy, he was always creating systems which ultimately had to work without him eventually, but he took crazy amount of time to create the systems, and then nobody kept him on a job to create the system because he was actually on the job to create the projects. So instead of creating projects, he was trying to program some kind of things which will work without him, ultimately, so that his job would be done without him and he would just monitor that, which was very strange logic, to be honest. He was all the time firing him from any company,
Yeah.
either with system or without system. So whatever, he was 24 years old, so he never could stick to the deadline. And when we were working on the same project, my boss was telling me, deadline is on this date. Never tell him when the deadline. I will tell him that it's 2 weeks earlier. So that's how we trick him. Most of the time it didn't help, but more or less. Now, another thing with vendors who create some things, we were creating some little numbers for cafe, the table numbers.
Yeah.
So our vendor messed up really, really badly with that. And they basically didn't create what we planned. They create something really terrible. And we couldn't just process with that. So we paid our money. Basically, we paid clients money to this vendor, and vendor didn't return us money because they say that they spend all money on the product, which wasn't true, but okay.
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
we basically invested our own money to create the product which we promised to create. And literally, boyfriend of my business partner actually created these numbers by himself. We were absolutely inventive, and we create the metallic numbers from the doors, all the things. I mean, we really were very, very innovative. So we created some cool stuff, but totally on our budget. We spent crazy amount of money on that, and that people were absolutely not accountable. However, because I'm paranoid about deadlines,
Yeah.
I gave so much more time for this project to the client, who was absolutely like, no, we need it ultimately now and stuff like that. But my paranoia saved us a few weeks to fail and actually create project like with 1 day delay or something like that. Basically, we delivered the project twice. Client didn't know about that. So they got what they wanted. They were quite happy about that. They loved the numbers. They had no idea it was all gift to the company from us,
Right.
to be honest. But the thing is, see, my paranoia about disbelief that team will deliver actually saved client. And that's the same thing. That previous guy who never stick to these deadlines, his behavior taught me that I need to have that extra 2 weeks in case something happen. If nothing happen, I can deliver things earlier.
Yeah.
Client will be happy.
Yes. Yes. So that there is extending trust blindly and just saying, this is when we need it and that's it, period. And if you know your team really well and you absolutely already have that trust, you can do that kind of blind trust. Most of us don't have that kind of connection with as many people as we work with. So there is smart trust, right? Specific, measurable, realistic, timely, the whole acronym. And that goes with, there is the time that it is due finished product versus there is the time due for us to have the first conversation. So there are multiple buy wins that can go into a thing. So if we, for a client, have a deadline of the 21st, we don't want to check in with each other on the 20th. That's bad business.
Mm-hmm.
That's just straight up dumb. But if we know that we have to have it by the 21st and we check in with everybody on the 7th and then we reconnect together on the 14th, by the 21st, we've already mounted all of the problems that could have ever come up in that amount of time.
Yeah, I mean, that worked when clients don't want everything on yesterday, which is common in advertising business, unfortunately. But yes, I agree with you.
Right.
Theoretical basis, yes, it does work. And
Yeah.
I was like, did I ever have a project which had 3 weeks? Ah.
Right.
Yeah,
And it may be 3 days. It may be like, look, you have to get this in 3 days because I'm going to check back in with you in 3 days because we have to put this out in 9 days. And then we have to adjust within 3 days so that we can show the client that things are coming and then deliver it. Yes.
yeah. Yeah, obviously it works differently for any business. That's correct.
Yeah.
So when we work with our teams, that's a very interesting thing. I think the biggest problem which I observe was probably 90% of organization I worked with, I worked in, or businesses I managed. So the problem actually miscommunication. So I'll give you two examples of miscommunication. One of them is when nobody asks each other within the team. So they don't really have prominent leader who can guide them through. And
Yes.
I told you the story before. We will not repeat the story when everybody from organization connecting with me for some reason, because I'm only person who actually heard what other organizations said, when it was, the dates and everything. I automatically doing that because I've been in the top management position like forever.
Yeah.
So it's just written on my face. This woman knows everything. Ask Eve, So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm
Yeah.
habitual to that. People literally ask me things like this on the streets.
Yeah.
That's the funny part,
Yeah.
which is I
You
know
move to a new town and they're like, how do I get to this place? You're like, I have
in
no idea.
any
Actually,
random
keep one step
city
on the
in
left.
the world, I know how to reach that location, which is like I've been in the city for next 2.5 hours. I need to know how to go there because it's written on my face. Yes, that
Yep.
that there.
I know
So
that, like, yeah. All right, I see you.
yeah, so it's good when we see that when we have such people in close proximity. It's not always happening. So unless you have it, the lack of communication within the team, it's a big problem. So that will be the question number one I want you to address. Another form of the miscommunication, because the question will be about the miscommunication. I remember that's probably about the corporate culture question. I remember we had a conversation with my art director in one of the companies where I worked. And I was new to the big corporate companies, and I didn't know that they trained to work by the script. I
Oh,
could recognize the script because I was quite familiar with psychology by that time. And I listened to that lady and I was like, that's absurd. What she just said doesn't make any sense to me. And I reacted like in a polite way, but I really was not offended, but I didn't feel positive about like how to say it politely. I didn't feel positive about that what she was saying. Now
yeah.
why I wasn't feel positive? So I created some form of design. For that time, it was a chance for me to show up as a junior art director, and she was like guiding me through the process. So she looked at my design and she said, "This is amazing design." So she appreciated it. I really, really like it. She liked it. I think that maybe if you will add few rounds here and do the composition like this, pretty much change everything in this design to completely different design, that will be slightly better. Here's a reference. Can you do something like that? And she was very positive all this time. Uh, I think if she would say, look, it doesn't work for me, I think you need to follow this reference and it will work better from my perspective, that would be realistic approach versus this pretending happy face approach, which was really, really a call to throw something heavy in her direction. So
Yeah.
yeah, it
Yeah.
didn't work like corporate culture intended it's supposed to work. Like we didn't
No.
traumatize anyone. Oh no, it just traumatized me and potentially could traumatize her if I
Yeah.
couldn't hold
If I
myself in my
reacted the way I
hands.
wanted to, yeah.
Oh, so this is the thing. The corporate culture, which is pretend to not traumatize us and give us these potential scripts for the future leaders, does it work or it's not working? Because what I see in organizations, people are not communicating to each other, or they communicating to each other in such a way that there is no discussion about leadership. It's a traumatized script written leadership, which is not leadership. So tell me more about that.
Yeah. That that is so valid in the world that we are in today. Everybody, we want to do the right thing. That doesn't mean we actually know how to go about doing that. So I would actually give a book recommendation here. If you find that that is a thing that is happening in your company, check out The Speed of Trust. I think it's the Stephen Covey one. Um, it's fantastic. It has 13 different ways that you can actually build trust within your community, within your organization, within your team, wherever you want. And I like pairing them. So what I've discovered is I pair things. So in that specific situation, what you found is that they were trying to demonstrate concern, but they were not being transparent and they were not being authentic. And
Mhm.
you can't have one without the other. You can't, if you're not honestly that way, then it's going to come across as not honest.
Mhm.
And if you're not being honest, that's not trustworthy. Facts.
Yeah.
So I use the Cara method, not just because it's my name, but 100% because it's my name. But it's clarify, it's assess, it's realign, and achieve. And clarity is its own challenge that usually requires several conversations. Assessing and realigning, the step that's in between those two things is feedback. And this is where we tend to get stuck in the messy middle, right? Rather than moving on from it and finishing whatever process we're getting through in our personal lives, in our business lives, in our culture, in our globe. Like this is a pattern we have seen regularly. Feedback is hard because feedback, when I say feedback, often what people hear is criticism or critique or I'm failing in some way. That's not what I said.
Mhm.
I said feedback. And becoming really good at accepting feedback is the fastest way to change the culture in your business. The fastest way to build engagement is to make and keep commitments. It's hands down the fastest way you can build trust. So if you want your team to engage, make a commitment and keep it. But if you want to know, like really know where the gaps are and how to get better, you're going to have to get okay with feedback. And you're not always going to like what they say, but you have to thank them for it anyway. And that's why leadership, that goes back to the me, we, right? It starts with me being in a place where, okay, I might hear something that's going to make me feel a kind of way about it. And I might have to take a few deep breaths before I say thank you so much for that feedback. I appreciate that you felt comfortable enough to say that to me. Because as hard as it is for us to hear bad feedback, giving it is actually worse. There are very few people on this planet who enjoy giving bad feedback. There are a few. We all know one out there who were like, oh yeah, but Joe over there, that, yeah. But most of humanity does not want to be that way because we don't enjoy it. It's that
Mhm.
golden rule, right? Do unto others. We don't enjoy getting negative feedback. We hate giving it. So if somebody has given you feedback, good or bad, that's huge respect. And if we can switch the language around feedback to from criticism, take the criticism out, take the judgment out, and recognize anyone who ever gives you feedback, even if it's them telling you how awful you are and how they hate you and how you suck at everything, they're actually an ally because they
Yeah.
just gave you all of the things that you can choose to do something about. And you may choose that you don't care that they hate you, and that's nice, Susie, but I'll see you Thursday at the meeting. Or you can say, hey, I don't intend to come across that way. If I'm coming across, if my this is one I've literally run into very often in my life because I had to learn not to be a Pollyanna. It's super good to be a positive and upbeat human unless you don't make space for legitimate trauma and drama, then you're Pollyannaing it, right? Nobody likes that. And so I was doing that. I was not allowing for people to genuinely have real problems. I was always looking for that silver lining. And somebody many times has said, I love that you're so happy, but I don't always want to be happy. Sometimes I need you to be in the dirt with me. And I was like, yeah, I think that's real. I think
Mhm.
that's valid. I appreciate that you felt comfortable enough to come and tell me that because that hurts. And I don't, and it hurts me. So it had to have hurt you. And I don't want that. So I'm going to try to create that space. When you say something is a struggle, we're going to live in that struggle together for a second. And then we're going to go and look for that silver lining on how we can get it better. But we'll give it its space. Will you will you help me do that? Because clearly I'm not great at it. You've just noticed this gap. So I'm going to need you to give me more feedback on it. And in the situation, which is going to make it extra hard, if in that moment you need that extra space, just tell me. I'm giving you permission now to tell me right then, and I'm going to try to remember that I gave you that permission so that I can take that deep breath and allow that space. But it starts with me first, because if I'm not taking care of me, I can't take care of we.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I think, like, you know, giving the honest feedback to yourself as well, it's really important. I remember I had to fire two people from the organization because they were exposing some bullying behavior to the service team. And it was underneath, they didn't know that we know. And they were not bad people, just they were younger and silly and all the things. But I have my values, and I made a decision that this is not acceptable behavior for my company. And it was not a question of the discussion about that, because I just don't accept this behavior and make a decision that these people have to go. So I fired them. And interestingly, these boys understood me, and in fact, they were remaining friends with me for quite a while on social media, and they didn't ever have the grunge or anything like that because they knew that I was right. And I explained that to them in a very clear manner. I was not angry with them. I just told them that they were wrong. And this goes against the company policies. And I choose to stop this job for them right now because of their behavior. And I would recommend them never do that again in their life ever.
Yeah.
So, because this is something which cost them the job.
Yeah.
So, I think that my honesty allowed them to actually build better businesses in the future, because, and in fact, build the better value system for themselves, because they were quite young boys, slightly lost, you know, in that age when boys are usually lost.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
because I was
Yeah.
probably half elder than them, I had a little bit of wisdom to give them, and they
Yeah.
respected that. So honesty, I appreciate honesty in the leaders of the
Yeah.
company, and I never appreciated that polished false
No, it's not
happiness. I
real.
would say it's not real, it's not authentic, and it doesn't help anyone at all. And in fact, it feels like somebody holds a stone in their pocket somewhere behind, because they tell you, "Oh, we love you so much, Chris." You know, so
Yeah.
that's actually feel really, really unsafe and
Yeah.
uncomfortable. So that's why I absolutely never recommend it, for sure. So, what are your best three tips about leadership? Go for that.
Knowledge is not transformation. That's going to take a lot of time. So what we said, what you don't know until you know, but even when you know, you may not do it. So knowledge is not transformation. It's not for us and it's not for them. You may have to say things 6,000 times, but
Mhm.
somebody had to say it 6,000 times for you to get it. That's how that works. Simple is the best way to go. There's no such thing as really perfect, but the more you practice, it gets closer to perfect and you can simplify. But simple is not easy. It takes all of that work to get it down to its simple stage. And epigenetics, like Tourette's with me these days. Your choice matters. Literally all of the brain science that we have, just in the last decade, the amount of study on who we are and how we do what we do is insane. But the choices that you make, and I'm talking like if you choose or don't choose, some of the subconscious things that we do, being aware of what you do and how you do it, and then choosing what you're going to do, choosing what you're going to think, choosing what you're not going to think about, choosing what you're going to do, choosing what you're not going to do, choosing what you're going to eat, choosing what you're not going to eat. All of those things create a chemical and electrical reaction in your body. Everybody knows that. We've done basic biology. If you're an adult, you've gotten that information. But because of those chemical and electrical signals that are going on, it literally shapes your brain. You can change your mush management and by your choices, activate new pathways, new brains, develop new cells, actual neurogenesis, the birth of new neurons can happen by your choices. And the more you carve those pathways into your brain, the more you choose to extend trust, the more you choose to accept that feedback, it's going to become easier. It never becomes easy, but it literally can change your DNA like flipping on a light switch. You become a feedback guru, you become a leadership powerhouse. All of those things become your reality. Epigenetics.
Fantastic. I love that nerdy end, which half of the people would not even understand. But yeah, guys, I mean, listen it for a few times. It's actually make a lot of sense. So,
Epigenetics, like Tourette's. Somebody does
yeah.
something very quiet. I'm like, epigenetics. Oh, sorry. Voice matters.
Yeah, that was Tourette syndrome, I know. No, it wasn't actually. It's a real word and it's not a curse word.
Right.
Just for those who didn't know how
But it is
people,
kind of like my own tick. Yeah.
so how people can connect with you and actually have a lot of fun with you.
Yeah, literally, if you ever want to hang out, I'll give a link to Eve, and so she has it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
somewhere in the description and somewhere on the screen there will be link.
yep. It just literally go in there, and if you say epigenetics, like we're just gonna hang out and have a good time. Period. Fun facts. Guaranteed in.
I hope you will give calendar form, not just people say to internet epigenetic and expecting Cara to
Epigenetic.
appear. I
Yeah, no,
mean,
do it on the
it
link. Do
may
it on
happen,
the.
but so the links will be legit and all this jazz. Thank you so much for your time. It was
Thank you,
amazing.
and thank you everyone listening. I appreciate you.